hunting game while he was checking out Oregon Springs, and they chased a bear into the cave that's back here. After they bagged the bear, they told Dad about the place. Dad came down, checked it out. It was a really good place for a mill, but there were Indians in the area. Delaware Indians lived in this area. The Becks were some of the earliest settlers here, so of course the Indians were white settlers, I should say. The Indians had their cornfield across the creek, and they had a village on down towards the bend there in Mill Creek. And he worked a deal with them, said, if you'll let me build a mill on this side of the creek, I will grind your corn for free. And they said, yeah, sure. And primarily, the Becks had a pretty good relationship with the Indians throughout the time that the Indians were in this area, other than like one stolen horse, which one of the other Indian males recovered and brought back to him. So the Becks have owned the property for 7 generations. The last member of the Beck family to own is Joyce Anderson. They live right across the creek here. And in 2005, the mill operated until 1954 as a going concern. The milling part of it wasn't so much. The milling pretty well died during the early 1900s when the Industrial Revolution really got good. There's no way for it to keep pace with the motorized mills. But Essie Beck, the last Beck to operate the mill, operated it more as a tourist attraction, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But so the first mill opened August in 1808. We just had our 210th birthday a couple weekends ago. The first structure, of course, was just a small log thing. Then in 1820, they built a larger structure that was a one-story, almost the same footprint as this one, but not quite. It's like a 25 by 25. This is more, 30 by 40 probably, or 36 by 40. Anyway, so that was in 1828. Then it burnt down in the early 1860s. So the mill that you see in front of you was built in 1863, 1864. And much of what's in the mill is still original. The far side was the side that really took the weather beating, and the roof, and that type of thing. But and so anyways, a lot of it's original. All of our equipment inside is original. The let's see. Like I said, it also operated as a post office from the mid 1800s to early 1900s, and you'll see that we've turned that into our gift shop. Hey, Trish.
Hi.
So this structure over here, when Essie turned this into a more of a tourist attraction, because it was kind of on the way from Louisville to French Lick, so she capitalized on that traffic and basically would have, on the weekends, she'd do chicken dinners, and so it's the chicken house. Then she also sold ice cream out of the back, where you can see that little door open there. We'll talk about that when we get to the back side, okay? So if you want to walk down here, I'll show you real quickly some of the workings. I don't want you standing in the sun too long.
So was this mill rebuilt before Morgan's raid or after? Because that would have been 1863.
I forgot to tell you about that. It was built. It was just starting to open when Morgan's raiders came through, and that arm that swung through here. The locals kind of got word that they were coming, and we don't know if they threw the picnic in support of or to for Morgan's raiders, or they were having a community picnic anyway. But Morgan's raiders would basically capture places of business and hold them hostage. Pay $1,000 or we'll burn your mill down or your general store down or whatever. Because there was a huge picnic and the community welcomed them in and fed them and everything, they did not torch this mill. And since it had just gotten back up and running, it was a big deal for the family. So thank you for asking that question. They did go right on into Salem and do quite a bit of damage there, stopped the courthouse and all. So this dam here is in front of the mouth to the cave. There's a cave behind there. It's actually underwater, the mouth is. And the opening's about 3 feet right there. Then the water comes down the big pipe there, and you can see the top chute, or the pipe that goes up and then bends over, and it dumps water on top of the wheel. And as the wheel turns and the water runs down on the back side, it actually, when it gets to the bottom, gives it a little bit more power. It gets a little more efficiency out of the water usage, because it was going to flow down this way. The big turbine housing right here where the water's coming out of, you can tell our water's really low because a lot of times that's almost like a fountain. It housed, or it ran the sawmill. The sawmill, basically, to where you guys are standing, it came off here in front, and I'll show you a picture when we get inside. The small turbine over here with you see the shaft going into the side of the building, that ran the front half of the mill, both on the first floor and the second floor. The water wheel ran the back half of the mill, first and second floor. And they actually had electricity out here with their water power. So let's go in where we can get at least out of the sun. It'll be a little more comfortable for you. We don't have air conditioning, as you might imagine, so.
We're used to that, right, Michaela?
We're just at home or
We're
work.
just complaining that we don't have air in our house. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it feels nice. Get that out of the sun, it just feels good, like a relief.
Yeah. We got a fan that sets up. And luckily pulls some of the cool air out of the water that's coming out of the cave. So here's a map of the cave. There's no entrance other than the one that's here behind the dam that's underwater, and then there's one additional entrance, but it's on private land, so nobody can get back in there. Only time we're able to get back in there is when it gets basically a drought and there's no water running. And we can drain the pool. But what I find interesting about it is that there's a variety of different heights of this cave, and there's all kinds of pictures there if you're interested in the caves, and there's all kinds of signatures from all the different people that went in. I think the earliest one was 1827 is the earliest date that I saw in those pictures, but they vary all through the place. But anyways, the opening here is 3 feet, right at this opening. And then the height of the cave varies all the way up to 34 or 37 feet. There are places that are so, in some of the taller chambers, where what they did is they actually drug in old car chassis and laid them from one side of the cave to the other side of the cave, so they could just cross straight over instead of having to go all the way down and all the way back up on the other side. So it's kind of cool, I think. Oh, another thing let me show you is Henry Ford was a friend of the Becks, and he often used the mill in his advertisements. And so one of those little things. That's cool. So as I said, all of our equipment here is original to the mill. Let me get back here. Normally we have a miller here, and but he is out today. Had a wedding he had to go to. So there are 2 grist mills, and both of these have been here since at least 1864, probably before. The stones are what they call French burr stone, and they were brought over from France in cargo ships or merchant ships. They'd come over because they weren't carrying much of anything else, and it gave more weight to the ships as they were crossing the ocean, made the ships a little more stable. So they'd come over, they would drop the burr stones, along the eastern coast, load up with their natural resources and go on. Well, they found out that the stones are extremely hard, and so they make wonderful milling stones because they last forever. And like I said, these have been here since at least 1864, probably before. And we did have to have them reground and regrouped, but other than that, that was the only changes we had to make to them. The top half of this particular machine is original. We had to replace the bottom half because when the place stood empty for so long, the beavers had gotten in and because this is the one that did the flour. Rodents love flour, and so they just ate the heck out of it. And you can actually see some of the damage here. Luckily that beam wasn't too bad, so we were able to keep it, both of the center beams here. So this is the flour grinding operation, and what they would do is they would bring their grain in. Oh, yeah. The way well, I'll tell you that when I get out back. Sorry, I'm doing like 4 different jobs here right now, and so there's different parts of the stories that we tell at different places. But anyway, they would drop their wheat grain into here, and it would go down into the basement. And then eventually they would haul it up to the second floor in this elevator or auger. And at the top, wheat grain very quickly gets a little mold on it, and it's called smut. And so, you know, you've heard the term smut before? At least some of them, probably not you, little one, but how old are you, sweetie? 5, okay. I got a task for you here in a few moments. I hope you're going to like it. But anyway, it would take it all the way up to the second floor, and there's a machine up there called a smutter. And it basically tumbles the grain. There's some brushes in there that kind of brush it, and it gets all of that smut off of it so that it can, you know, you don't want to grind the smut into your flour. It would then come down through this hopper into the top here, get ground, and then it would go back up to the second floor on this elevator here. And what it would go up, and there is a into what they call the bowler. There is and we'll go up there. There's a big machine, and it's got this big cylinder that lays on its side, and it has different sizes of gauze or netting around it, and it would turn. So the flour is being tumbled in there and is being sifted according to the size of the netting. So the first sifting, the finest, is called the fair, and that's the flour that we all, you know, pretty well know. The second sifting, that's a little bit larger grain, are the Midlands. Does anybody here ever eat cream of wheat? Okay,
Yeah.
Cream of wheat are the Midlands. And then what was left would be the bran or the chaff or whatever like that, and that was usually for animals or, you know, stuffing or whatever, you know, of pillows and things like that. But both the fair and the Midlands would come down in different chutes and be bagged and weighed over here. So anybody here heard the term fair to Midland?
Yes.
That's where it comes from. This comes from your miller. So your fair to Midland comes from flour grinding operations. All right, this machine here is a really simple one to operate. This is our corn grinding, and we do, like I said, we do grind corn and grits. We sell them down at our gift shop. I don't think we've got them out yet. They're in the refrigerator. And you want to refrigerate grain, particularly from back in the day when there were no preservatives in it, because it could go bad pretty quickly. And so back in the day, people would have to come to the mill every 2 to 3 weeks to grind more corn and more flour because it would go bad otherwise in the meantime. Anyway, so it goes up here, it's ground, and like I said, this back half is ran by the water wheel. The wheel is right outside this window. As it turns, there's a turbine down in the basement, or a gear down there that's turning, and then it will turn this one here. And as you can see, here's the shaft that runs up and over that then runs the top half of the back of the building. The other one I forgot to show you, that shaft over there is the one that goes up to the second floor to run the front half, and that's the small turbine that was going. Anyway, so the corn gets ground, comes out here, and very simply, we just use different size sieves. The first, the finest grinding turns out to be your cornmeal, and the little bit heavier grinding is your grits, and you use white corn for grits. So this machine and this machine are basically shuckers. So it's just different, you know. Cool. And this one has a hand crank over there, and then when they took this in over home, the Andersons did when the mill, you know, eventually, or actually I should say Allen's, and they put this big wheel on it because it's a lot easier to turn with this big wheel than it was with the hand crank over there. All right, now. So tell me, do y'all have geese or ducks or birds in your area? at home?
Sometimes. Yeah.
Well,
Go to the lake.
what's your name? Missy?
Macy.
Macy. Macy is going to grind some corn for us. When this place stood kind of vacant, for what, 1954 to 2005, a lot of people came in, broke in, etc., and pilfered items out of here. Always the small stuff that they would take. When we take it upstairs, there's an old museum up there. Most of that stuff is gone, other than the big items that are there. Well, there was this man who was a kid then. He took this little hand grinder here, and about 2 months ago, I guess it was, he brought it back when he found out that we were open. And so he brought it back. So the corn is food grade, but the machine's not. So you don't want to eat this corn, okay? Let me get back over here. Turn this off and get it out of the way. And you need somebody to hold your bag for you.
Michaela, you want to hold our Jada?
And so you're going to put it right here. You're going to, and Miss Macy, you're going to come around over here. I want you to stand here. I'm going to put the corn in here, and you see this here? You're going to turn it like this. Now look down on top there. You see those teeth? They're going to grind this, crack the corn up for you, okay? So hang on. There you go. Now it might be easier if you come and you stand kind of like I am. It just depends. I'm not sure what your reach is, but go ahead and turn, and you'll see the corn coming out. Around. And you can use that corn to feed birds or ducks or geese.
Having fun, Macy? Huh?
Macy, you're a good worker.
You could be a full-time corn grinder.
Now you go buy a little duck and geese. Grind the corn. Yeah, I hear you.
Want somebody to take your place, maybe? So you can hold the bag and watch it come out? Is that hard?
This is the back behind the mill here, and that looks like an old spring house, I'm sure.
Can you see it coming out, Macy?
There, I guess, is possibly where the old original house would have stood. That's the crossroad parking lot, side of the old mill. Look at this great big sycamore tree. This thing's easily been here since the 1860s. A monster. And that's where the old cave originally comes out. You can see the water pipe coming out.
Work just for a little bit of mill there, isn't it? So that's why these big stones is a lot more efficient for families. But if you just needed a little
I'm
bit
gonna
of
stop
corn,
it for now.
there you go.